Have you ever felt your heart shatter every time they quietly walk away without a single word of explanation? Have you poured all your passion, love, and trust into someone who always seems to step back, avoiding any deep conversation? You've tried to stay calm, to bury the pain within, but their silence cuts you open, leaving you on the brink of despair. Every time you type, "Are you okay? Can we talk?" you're met with nothing but invisible voids, making you wonder if you're even worthy of love. In the stillness of the night, your chest tightens, recalling the promises. "I'll always be here." Yet they leave, leaving you with unanswered questions. Why do they keep running away? Where did I go wrong? Do I deserve to be abandoned like this? That pain is more than just a scar on your heart. It's a barrier that blocks you from true happiness. You're exhausted from chasing someone who ever retreats, worn down by hope turned into disappointment time and again. But what if I told you that this very pain, their silence and departure, could become the turning point forcing them to wake up? That it's not begging, not walking on eggshells that will change them, but your unwavering boundaries, the refusal to let yourself be buried in silent loneliness? Pause for a moment and feel this. The agony of abandonment is the most powerful catalyst that compels them to face themselves. It is at that edge moment that they might touch the depths of their own soul and finally ask, "Why do I always run away?" And for the first time, begin to consider changing. Have you ever noticed in a relationship that your partner consistently avoids deep conversations, constantly sidesteps emotional topics, and sometimes disappears mysteriously, only to return as if nothing happened? This is not merely an eccentric personality trait or personal quirk. It is a defense mechanism deeply ingrained in the psyche of someone with an avoidant attachment style. Born from a childhood devoid of nurturing warmth, they never learned to name their emotions, never guided through the stages of hurt, and thus revealing one's inner world became the greatest risk of rejection, ridicule, or being labeled weak. When that vulnerability is never held and healed, it does not dissipate, but instead retreats inward, constructing an emotional wall that is strong yet profoundly lonely. Unconsciously, they master avoidance, avoiding heartfelt communication, avoiding moments that force self-reflection, avoiding anything that might shake down that wall. In a relationship, when the other person, overflowing with love, strives to soothe every tension, fears any collision, and is always ready to go along to keep the peace, they unwittingly empower the avoidance tactics. Whenever you hope for an honest conversation, they skillfully vanish behind silence, sometimes offering superficial responses or promises to talk later. You gradually realize that the more you try to protect and balance the atmosphere, the deeper the avoidance sinks into their inner world, a world filled with unnamed emotions, silent fears, and obsessions with alienation. When you try to lower that wall with compassion and endurance, they maintain distance, because your excessive gentleness reduces the pressure that might compel them to look inward. And in that distance, you start to hear the echoes of their loneliness. The echo of a child who was never guided through emotional storms, never heard the comforting words, "I'm here," when crying, and never taught to accept pain as an essential part of being human. Their silence is not just an avoidance of conflict, it is a silent cry for help, a lonely sigh laden with fear, and a final guard for a soul already deeply wounded. Each time you try to pull them out of their shell, you hit an invisible barrier, and you ultimately realize that every accommodation, every reassurance only makes that wall harder. Therefore, observing an avoidant partner is not merely recognizing avoidance behavior, but feeling the deep-rooted origin of that flight, an overwhelming fear of emotional loss of control, an obsession with wounds that cannot heal unless faced directly, and an instinct for self-preservation etched into their subconscious. When you understand that they are not simply hard to reach but are carrying the weight of an emotionally deprived past, you can truly comprehend the dynamic driving their retreat whenever the relationship deepens. From there, you recognize that every attempt to keep the peace by lowering the intensity of conflict only perpetuates emotional stagnation, whereas they genuinely need a shock powerful enough to shake and break that wall, paving the way for a real healing journey. After unveiling the dense emotional walls in the observation section, which expose the loneliness and fears of the avoidant individual, we now delve deeper into the psychological roots driving this flight mechanism. Identifying the behavior marked the beginning. Now we will strip away the layers of arrested development, those psychological patterns never given a proper chance to mature, leading to a fundamental deficit in self-awareness and emotional regulation. The term arrested development is not just sterile academic jargon. It describes the poignant story of a soul never truly taught how to grow. From early childhood, before the protective canopy of love had a chance to form, they learned self-reliance and retreated into a solitary inner world. Devoid of adult guidance through anger, sadness, or confusion, they were never gifted our ability to label emotions, so when faced with frustration, fear, or disappointment, all they had was a chaotic mass beyond their control. They had no emotional map, no internal compass, only the instinct to withdraw, to silence themselves, to entomb pain through avoidance. The absence of a guiding mirror, someone to model, to learn self-regulation, alongside blocked the development of metacognition crucial for any healing process. As adults, these wounds do not vanish. They merely reconfigure themselves into ever more sophisticated avoidance tactics. A minor critique can trigger an unnamed emotional storm, prompting them to retreat, silence, withdrawal, or abruptly severing contact. This is not malicious behavior, but a survival reflex of a soul too fragile to face negative feelings. They believe negative emotions must be condemned, locked away forever, for if allowed to surface, they fear losing control and becoming a threat to themselves and the relationship. Triggers arise from seemingly mundane situations, a casual question, a mismatched glance, or simply the exhaustion of a long day. Unspoken turmoil resonates like a taut string on the verge of snapping, urging them to withdraw to protect their fragile sense of self. In such moments, they cannot differentiate between present emotions and past traumas. Every nuance merges into a single pain rooted in insecurity. Avoidance becomes their optimal strategy. Silence, disappearance, communication freeze, and sometimes an abrupt breakup without explanation. This sudden-cut breakup is not a power play, but their way of escaping nameless emotions. It leaves the partner reeling, as there was no warning, no sign, only the void of silence dominating shared space. To understand arrested development is to acknowledge that they don't lack affection or communication skills out of choice, but because they were never taught that it's safe to express vulnerability. Each time we inadvertently uphold their walls, we unintentionally lock them further from emotional freedom. Here we realize, it isn't unconditional, gentle empathy that will change them, but rather a method of eliciting positive activation, a jolt strong enough to awaken self-reflection. Only when the pain of consequences outweighs the fear of facing one's own emotions will they be willing to dismantle each brick of their emotional barrier. The next section will explore how to transform triggers into catalysts that spark their healing journey, where they no longer flee, but courageously confront themselves. When the pain from the ultimate consequence of avoidant behavior becomes stronger than the pain of having to face oneself, rock bottom emerges as a decisive threshold of awakening. Imagine standing before the abyss of a broken relationship, where a life partner, someone once so inseparable, has walked away, or someone you trusted the most has slammed shut the door to your heart without explanation. When that loss brings a void deeper than any fear of self-examination or responsibility for past mistakes and avoidance tactics, rock bottom is officially reached. At this threshold, any retreat feels meaningless. The price for sudden avoidance is the sense of abandonment and hurt, and the realization that no one, not even the person you desperately cling to, can rescue you from the internal need to own your emotions and behaviors. This is when the magic of natural consequences begins to manifest. By holding firm to your boundaries and resolutely refusing to answer those pleas for immediate reconciliation after each abrupt breakup, you are allowing them to experience the full price of their avoidance. Every unreturned message, every last-minute canceled meeting, every empty promise becomes a brick in the cold wall you build around yourself. At the moment they realize there is no shortcut to coming back, they must confront the emptiness they have sown in you. They will understand that the loss and pain you feel are not mere temporary reactions, but the inevitable outcomes of choosing avoidance over dialogue, avoidance over responsibility. And from that deep bottom, a turning point occurs. They must judge their own behavior and ask themselves if a relationship where they can always withdraw at the first sign of tension is worth preserving. The feeling of rock bottom is not the end goal, but rather the counterforce that compels balance. If they refuse to acknowledge it, they risk losing the single most important thing, the chance to be fully accepted in a relationship. When these natural consequences come into play, they not only bring clarity, but also become the catalyst for transformation. By not allowing the other to dodge guilt and regret, you trigger an internal process of change, leading them to deeper awareness of the importance of honest communication, accountability, and long-term commitment. And from that painful bottom, many have found the springboard to personal growth, nurturing compassion for themselves and others, and laying a more secure and enduring foundation for all future relationships. From that painful rock bottom emerges an irresistible turning point. Only by enduring the consequences can they ignite the strong catalyst to ask themselves the essential questions. Why do I always fail at relationships? What deep-seated avoidance is driving people away? What must I do to break this cycle of failure? Seemingly simple queries, when born from genuine loss, possess the power to stop their minds in their tracks and observe themselves with fresh objectivity. If before they blamed circumstances, partners, or busy schedules, now there is no choice but to confront their own shadows. Fears of dependency, insecurities around deep conversations, and above all, the habit of retreating whenever conflict arises. This process doesn't happen overnight. It requires time for each internal question to ripen. When the pain of emptiness leaves no room for excuses, personal reflections on past failures gradually open the door to self-examination. They begin to acknowledge moments when they remained silent instead of speaking up, recognize times they used physical distance to avoid emotions, and clearly see that every outburst of anger followed by withdrawal was a surrender to their own need for understanding and connection. This acknowledgement marks the beginning of an inner psychological dialogue where responsibility is no longer a burden to avoid, but becomes the strongest motivator for change. Next, under the light of self-reflection, they discover the true value of taking responsibility for their behavior. When they no longer fret over, "it doesn't matter," or "I'll deal with it later," they start to see the link between respecting others' boundaries and maintaining secure connection. They realize that directly admitting mistakes, offering sincere apologies, and actively resolving conflict does not diminish their worth, but instead affirms their autonomy and inner courage. This is the first step in transforming avoidance into dialogue, irresponsibility into commitment, and fear of connection into a longing to be understood and accepted. Finally, as this realization deepens, they gradually dismantle the invisible defensive walls they have built. Instead of viewing distance as salvation, they begin to see closeness as the true foundation of safety. From this, secure attachment capacity slowly forms. They learn to listen without judgment, share feelings without fear of harm, and set balanced boundaries, preserving personal space while trusting enough to let others in. This process not only improves their current relationship, but also lays a solid groundwork for all future connections. That moment of revelation, born from enduring consequences and self-reflection, is precisely the starting point for them to become a more mature version of themselves, ready to engage in healthy and lasting bonds. Building on that powerful moment of revelation, the healing journey begins with a firm decision. You are not the punisher, but the boundary keeper, allowing them to fully experience the consequences and choose their own path. Instead of continually acting as the emotional lifeline, every time they falter in the sea of feelings, you must remain rooted in your own stance, only reopening your heart when they have genuinely committed to confronting and working through their inner wound. This is not just an act of self-protection, but a vital test of their commitment. If they are not yet ready to take responsibility and brave enough to ask themselves, "What do I need to change?" they will remain stuck in childish evasion and emotional immaturity. Conversely, when they demonstrate through concrete actions such as proactively reaching out to a therapist, joining support groups, or honestly sharing their fears and failures with you, that is the moment you may consider loosening the boundaries to rebuild trust together. Throughout this process, you must maintain clarity. Small signs like timely message replies, scheduling meetings without last-minute cancellations, or showing a listening attitude instead of walking away are proof that they are gradually transforming avoidance into accountability and dialogue. You need not force them forward, but you also cannot wait indefinitely in vain. Patience has its limits, and it only endures until they recognize that perpetual distance leads the relationship to a dead end. Simultaneously, you must also invest time in your own healing, learning to self-value, self-love, and engaging in practices that support mental well-being such as meditation, journaling, or communication skills workshops. As you become stronger and more self-reliant, you become the mirror they reflect on, realizing that personal responsibility and commitment do not destroy freedom, but rather provide the secure foundation for mutual growth. Ultimately, holding boundaries is not about punishment, but about creating the space for them to choose if they truly wish to return to the path of growth. They will embrace that first effort and be ready to receive the love and trust you offer to a more whole version of themselves. At that point, the relationship is not only restored but elevated, serving as living proof of the power of self-responsibility and sincere commitment. By standing firm in your boundaries and allowing natural consequences to unfold, you give your partner the sole opportunity to confront their own truth. This is not punishment, but a rigorous test, forcing them to choose between continuing to retreat in fear or summoning the courage to face themselves and take responsibility. This journey is not for the faint-hearted. It demands strength from both sides, you to let them experience the deepest isolation, and them to strive beyond their own limits. When the pain of those consequences triggers profound self-inquiry, and when they respond with tangible change, that is when the seed of secure attachment begins to sprout. And if they truly value you, they will not return to old patterns, but will walk the healing path by your side, forging a genuine, lasting, and trust-filled bond.